What a day we had. It's, you know, I said, well, we'll go to Enterprise Island, we'll see some history, see some wildlife, and we'll see what else comes out to play. Little did we know what was going to come out to play was probably some in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 whales all scattered around us, where everybody got them there. And somebody had asked me, when was the last time you'd seen something like that? And it was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 7 years ago. And it was in Wilhelmina, so next bay over. And because, well, Enterprise is part of Wilhelmina, but where we turned in the snowstorm and started heading towards the north, that's where it happened in similar numbers. And it's just absolutely remarkable to have it. And so we do hope that you enjoyed it, to see that many whales in that area. I also find it extremely interesting that we have that kind of whale activity in that area. And the reason being is the Gervinern, which Ross just told us, was responsible for killing hundreds of whales, maybe even thousands of whales. The artifacts that were pulled up, the water boats, still related to the whaling industry, the bollards on the shore, the chains, that type of idea. And to be able to see that number in and around that area is always quite remarkable to me, because that obviously was an area that was hunted and probably overhunted, as we know now. But the other question that I always get asked is, what changes have you seen in Antarctica? In '95, when I first came down, we had 2 whale experiences all seasons, and I was down for 5 months. Now we can almost have whale experiences every voyage, but we had...
See that splash guard's the first thing. There we go, fluke. The rest will follow suit. That is a big whale on the looker's right. Whoa. Awesome. I didn't see the whale, but... Fluke. Oh yeah, baby. Awesome. Everything around you is a glacier. It's all moving in towards us. The difference here is, given the topography, that those ice blocks, those huge seracs at the water's edge, collapse into the water and spawn an iceberg, as opposed to the other side of the peninsula, behind this landmass in front of us. The topography is very different, and it's very subtle. So rather than collapsing in the ocean, it allows that glacier to move out over the ocean, creating an ice shelf and all those things. That's just a glacier that has come off the top. So, I don't know how often, like, how long it's taken that to get that short distance, but I'm not sure. Self, very good. And then they break off, and then that one will form a new one, and that one will form a new one. And so the red bit is actually its gastric mill, its stomach. And it looks like a jellyfish, but it's not. It's related to sea squirts or tunicates. Self, very good. Nice work over there, team.
So the population of the humpback whale in 25 years has exploded a lot, and it's great to see and do see it and to witness it.
Go for it. Oh, that was a belly flop. You can hear the slap. Amateur move.
The Gouverneurin, which nearly all of us saw today, a relic down here of the early whaling days. She was built in 1891, and originally she was used for livestock between London and New York.
At 9 o'clock. You see the bubbles?
No. Oh, yes.
There's that
Flipper.
pectoral fin there. Oh no, that's looks like a calf now. You can actually see the tubercles on the rostrum, all that bumpy bit on like the nose of the whale. So there's probably 3 of them. Yeah, it's a cow, calf, and an escort. Deep breath. You're seeing the rostrum come up and all the tubercles and that raised area around the blowhole, the splash guard, and then the dorsal. Double flute?
Yep.
Deep breath. Double flute? That throat on a humpback's only the size of a grapefruit. Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw that amazing picture that was going around the internet that humpback inadvertently engulfed a sea lion. And needless to say, both parties escaped. But the I wonder if the sea lion did any damage to the balloon. Water back out through the mouth and sifting it through his baleen or her baleen.
And then a company purchased her and used her for whaling off Mozambique, of all places. And after not having good whaling seasons there, that company went bankrupt and a Norwegian company purchased her, and she was the state-of-the-art ship because they repurposed her on board with cookers and boilers. So not only could they just flens the whales, which was normally the case, they could, once they'd flensed, taken the blubber off, they would then crane the other pieces of the whales up and render it down to make guano, or like blood and bone, fertilizer, and hundreds of tons of guano in a season, which was worth a lot of money, but nowhere near as much as the whale oil, which at that time, in 1915, before she sunk, she had a couple of bumper seasons. And during World War I, that was a very hot commodity, whale oil, because it was used in glycerine, and glycerine was used to make dynamite. So when she went down, there was a fire on board. Someone had knocked over a lamp. She caught fire. They tried to run her aground. Well, first they tried to use exploding tipped grenade harpoons to partially sink her to put the fire out. They couldn't do so, and so the captain ran her aground. There were 85 men on board working that ship, and all of them survived. There were no casualties or what have you. But her whole load was lost, and it was a big blow to the whole whaling industry at the time when she went down. So she was really a state-of-the-art ship. The whales would get caught with steam catches and pulled alongside, the blubber cut off, and they just used the blubber, and then they would let the carcasses float, and whale carcasses that are just rotting on the beach. And so that's how they used to do it before the Gouvernoran came along and could do everything on board. However, Ben Foyne invented the grenade-tipped exploding harpoon, and that changed the industry significantly when he did that. And today we were in Foyne Harbour in Wilhelmina Bay, which was named, the Belgium expedition named that after the Queen of Netherlands, and Foyne Harbour was named after the man that invented this gun. This recap tonight that I've presented to you has not been scientific, and it's brought to you by Google and Wikipedia. And I did want to give a shout out as well to Encyclopedia Britannica. Thank you.
Yeah, going to find Foyne Harbour is like going home again, kind of. It turns out my great-great-great-grandmother's cousin was Sven Foyne's second wife. So there is no blood, whale blood on my hands, but I really look forward to telling you about Sven Foyne perhaps tomorrow night. There just isn't time to do it.
Various lines, one of the current one, which is exactly parallel to the ocean surface. It's horizontal. And then there's and that's about 1 meter off the water surface. Then you see another one at a slight angle, and then another one 1 meter above that. So that's the succession of float lines. And as I mentioned during our little impromptu talk, for those of you I've shared the company with, is the vast majority of the deterioration of the iceberg is occurring underneath the water, not the part that's exposed to the sun and to the environment. So it's a little bit counterintuitive. But in doing so, you know the old adage, like you're seeing 80 to 90% of the iceberg is underneath the water. So what's happening is that as that thing deteriorates and it's rotting, it's losing mass underwater, it's losing its ballast, it's becoming increasingly unstable, and then it creeps up a little bit. And then it creates a new float line. And then it loses more mass, it creates a new float line. But you notice how they're slightly at an angle? And it's kind of going, the angles are going this way? That means that thing slowly but surely is in the process, and it's going to flip next to the looker's left. Same with, pardon? Yep. That thing is flipped over many times. And what you're actually seeing is you look at it, you notice how the one side's scalloped, the looker's right, then the rest is that perfectly smooth surface. That perfectly smooth surface used to be underneath the water, and the part that's scalloped used to be above the water. So that's the old float line running perfectly perpendicular. So that thing is flipped many times over. And just as a reminder, the color of that berg is indicative of the density of that berg. That thing is it's ice that formed as a result of hyperconsolidated snow. And a gazillion years ago, back, when that was somewhere in the interior of Antarctica, and then it, overcome by gravity, it migrated down towards, downward near the coast. And in doing so, trapping all those dinosaur farts between snowflakes.
Ice is our master, and so we're not